Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, and thank you for joining me today, because if you love discovering hidden treasures hiding in plain sight, then you are absolutely in the right place. And today's story is one that has shocked collectors, numismatists, and everyday pocket change hunters all around the world, because we are diving deep into the unbelievable story of a 2011 1-cent coin that has stunned the coin collecting universe with whispers and legends of being worth up to $5 million due to a rare combination of errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and extraordinary circumstances that transformed an ordinary copper-plated zinc penny into a potential once-in-a-lifetime fortune. And as we explore this incredible possibility, I want you to imagine the idea that something so small, something you may have handled countless times without a second thought, could secretly hold a value greater than luxury homes, supercars, or even lifelong financial freedom. And that is why stories like this capture the imagination, because they remind us that history, chance, and human error can collide in the most unexpected ways. And the 2011 Lincoln cent is a perfect example of how modern coins are not immune to becoming legendary, even in an age of advanced technology and strict quality control, because no system is flawless. And when mistakes happen at the United States Mint, especially during years of high production demand, those mistakes can become the holy grail for collectors who know exactly what to look for. And in 2011 the Denver Mint was operating at an immense scale, producing billions of cents to meet circulation needs across the country, and with that massive volume comes pressure, speed, and the reality that small deviations can slip through undetected, leading to coins that are dramatically different from what the Mint intended. And the fascinating part of this story is that many people still believe valuable error coins only exist in older decades like the 1940s, 1950s, or the famous error years of the 1970s and 1980s, but the truth is that modern cents like the 2011 can be just as valuable, if not more so, because modern errors are often harder to detect, more controversial, and sometimes even more dramatic due to the complexity of the minting process. And before we dive into the specific errors that could make a 2011 cent worth millions, it's important to understand exactly what this coin is supposed to be, because knowing the normal helps us identify the extraordinary. And the standard 2011 Lincoln cent features the familiar Lincoln portrait on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, with the Union Shield reverse that was introduced just a year earlier in 2010, symbolizing Lincoln's preservation of the United States. And the coin is composed of a zinc core with a thin copper plating weighing approximately 2.5 grams with a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, and under normal circumstances this coin is worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. But when errors occur during planchet preparation, striking, die creation, or even metal composition, the value can skyrocket beyond imagination. And one of the most sensational possibilities associated with the 2011 cent is the idea that a small number of these coins may have been struck on the wrong metal planchets, a mistake that has happened before in U.S. mint history and has produced some of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. And when we talk about wrong planchet errors, we are talking about a situation where a cent is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or a different metal composition altogether, such as copper, brass, or even experimental alloys. And if a 2011 cent were somehow struck on a solid copper planchet similar to pre-1982 cents, or on a bronze alloy not intended for circulation, the rarity and desirability of such a coin would be off the charts, especially because the Mint officially transitioned away from copper decades earlier, and collectors are obsessed with transitional errors because they represent moments when old and new systems collide. And the possibility of a 2011 cent being struck on a leftover copper planchet, an experimental planchet, or even a foreign metal blank would immediately elevate it into legendary status, potentially commanding prices in the millions if authenticated and confirmed as unique or one of only a handful in existence. And this is not just fantasy, because similar errors have occurred with other denominations, such as cents struck on dime planchets, quarters struck on nickel planchets, and even coins struck on silver blanks long after silver was removed from circulating coinage. And the 2011 cent exists within this realm of possibility because the Mint handles multiple metals and denominations simultaneously, and all it takes is one overlooked tray, one mislabeled container, or one moment of human error for history to be made. And another major category of errors that could push a 2011 cent toward the $5 million mark involves dramatic die errors, especially those that are visually stunning and structurally extreme, such as massive die breaks, retained cut errors, shattered dies, or multiple overlapping strikes that create a coin that looks more like abstract art than currency. And collectors pay enormous premiums for coins that display minting chaos in a way that is both obvious and unique. Because these errors cannot be easily replicated and often occur only briefly before the mint shuts down the faulty equipment, and imagine a 2011 D cent with a massive retained cut stretching across Lincoln's portrait, or a dramatic die break that distorts the Union shield beyond recognition, or a multi-struck coin that shows overlapping images rotated at strange angles, all struck off-center and misaligned, creating a one-of-a-kind specimen that instantly becomes the centerpiece of any advanced collection. And when such errors are combined with pristine condition and verified provenance, the value can climb exponentially, especially if the coin is the most extreme example ever recorded for that year and mint. And then there is the tantalizing possibility of a mule error, which is one of the rarest and most valuable types of mint mistakes imaginable. And a mule occurs when the obverse die of one coin is paired with the reverse die of a completely different coin, resulting in a hybrid that was never intended to exist. And while mule errors are exceptionally rare, they have occurred in modern times, and if a 2011 D Lincoln cent were somehow paired with a reverse from another denomination or an experimental design, the numismatic world would erupt with excitement, and such a coin would not just be valuable, it would be historic, potentially reaching values in the millions depending on uniqueness, authenticity, and demand. And what makes mule errors so fascinating is that they represent a breakdown at the very core of the minting process, involving die preparation, storage, and installation, and because dies are carefully tracked and controlled, a mule slipping through suggests a perfect storm of oversight that collectors find endlessly intriguing. And beyond these dramatic errors there are also more subtle yet equally powerful factors that can elevate the value of a 2011 D cent to astonishing heights, including double dies, especially those that show strong, unmistakable doubling on Lincoln's features, lettering, or the date. And while minor doubling is common and often dismissed as machine doubling, true double die errors are created during the die-making process and result in crisp, separated images that are highly collectible. And if a 2011 D cent were discovered with a bold double die obverse or reverse that rivals the most famous double dies in history, such as the 1955 or 1969 S cents, it would instantly become one of the most sought-after modern coins ever found. And the value of such a coin would be driven not only by the error itself but by the story, the discovery, and the rarity, especially if only one or two examples exist. And as we continue this journey deeper into the possibilities surrounding the 2011 D cent, it becomes clear that its potential value is not based on a single factor but on a convergence of errors, condition, timing, and collector psychology, because the coin market is driven as much by emotion and storytelling as it is by metal and mechanics. And a coin that captures the imagination can command prices that defy logic, and the idea of a $5 million penny is powerful because it challenges our assumptions about value and reminds us that rarity is not always about age, but about uniqueness and circumstance. And this is why collectors continue to search rolls, jars, and change trays with relentless curiosity, hoping to be the one who uncovers the next great discovery. And the 2011 D cent represents a modern frontier in this hunt, a reminder that even coins from recent years can hold secrets waiting to be revealed. And as we move forward in this story we will explore even more layers of possibility, including extraordinary strike-through errors, missing elements, wrong die alignments, and the role of grading, authentication, and market demand in transforming. Next, 1997 D1 cent coin, the channel everyone, and a huge thank you for tuning in today, because if you enjoy uncovering unbelievable stories hidden inside everyday objects then you are absolutely in the right place. And today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and controversial modern coin stories ever discussed, the incredible possibility that a simple 1997 D1 cent coin could be worth as much as $4 million due to a rare combination of errors, minting mistakes, unusual circumstances, and numismatic mysteries that have captured the imagination of collectors all over the world. And it is almost impossible to believe that a penny you may have spent without a second thought or left forgotten in a jar could one day be valued higher than luxury homes, private jets, or decades of income. Yet history has proven time and time again that when rarity, error, and timing collide, even the smallest denomination can become a legendary treasure. And the 1997 D Lincoln cent sits at the crossroads of modern minting technology and human imperfection, a time when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins at high speed while still relying on complex mechanical systems that were far from immune to error. And to understand why this coin has become the subject of multi-million-dollar speculation, we first need to understand what it was supposed to be, because only by knowing the standard can we truly appreciate the extraordinary. And under normal circumstances, the 1997 Lincoln cent features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, along with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in use since 1959, and the coin was struck at the Denver Mint using a zinc core with a thin copper plating weighing approximately 2.5 grams. And billions of these coins were produced for circulation, making most examples worth exactly 1 cent, yet hidden among this massive production were the conditions that allowed rare and dramatic errors to escape into the world, and one of the most exciting possibilities surrounding the 1997 cent involves wrong planchet errors, a category that has produced some of the most valuable modern U.S. coins ever discovered. And a wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or made of an unintended metal, and while this may sound impossible in a modern minting environment, history has shown that it can and does happen. And if a 1997 cent were struck on a solid copper planchet similar to pre-1982 cents, or on a bronze or brass planchet intended for another coin or even a foreign denomination, the rarity of such an error would immediately elevate its value to astonishing levels, especially because by 1997 the use of solid copper for cents had been discontinued for over a decade, making any appearance of such metal in a modern cent an extraordinary anomaly. And collectors are particularly obsessed with transitional and wrong metal errors because they represent moments when old systems overlap with new ones or when experimental materials accidentally enter circulation. And if a 1997 cent were authenticated as being struck on a solid copper or experimental alloy planchet, the numismatic community would erupt with excitement, potentially driving the value into the millions if the coin were unique or one of only a few known examples. And this possibility is not merely theoretical because similar errors have occurred with other denominations and years, proving that no minting system is completely immune to mistakes. And beyond wrong planchets there is the equally dramatic world of major die errors, which can transform an otherwise ordinary coin into a stunning visual record of minting chaos, and these include massive die breaks, retained cuts, shattered dies, and other catastrophic failures that occur when dies crack or break under extreme pressure. And if a 1997 cent were struck during the brief window when a die was failing in a dramatic way, the resulting coin could display bold raised metal, distorted lettering, and partially missing design elements that make it instantly recognizable as something special. And collectors are drawn to these errors not only because of their rarity but because each one tells a story of mechanical stress and human oversight, and a particularly extreme example from a year like 1997, especially if it were the most dramatic known specimen, could command an enormous premium, especially if it remained in high-grade condition. And then there is the possibility of multiple strike errors, where a coin is struck more than once without being properly ejected from the press, resulting in overlapping images, rotated designs, and distorted shapes that defy the expectations of normal coinage. And when such errors are combined with off-center strikes or broad strikes, the visual impact can be breathtaking, turning the coin into a one-of-a-kind artifact that collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to acquire. And in rare cases where multiple dramatic errors occur on the same coin, the value can increase exponentially because the odds of such a combination are astronomically low. And another category that plays a significant role in the multimillion-dollar speculation surrounding the 1997 cent is the presence of true double die errors, which are often misunderstood, but highly prized when genuine. And unlike machine doubling, which occurs during the striking process and adds little value, true double dies are created during die production when the design is impressed more than once in slightly different positions, resulting in clear, separated doubling on letters, numbers, or design elements. And if a 1997 cent were discovered with a bold double die obverse or reverse that rivals the most famous double dies in U.S. history, it would instantly become one of the most important modern cent discoveries ever made, especially if the doubling were dramatic and easily visible to the naked eye. And such a coin would not only be valuable but historically significant, drawing attention from major collectors, auction houses, and grading services around the world. And as these possibilities accumulate, it becomes clear that the idea of a $4 million 1997 D cent is not based on a single error but on the potential convergence of multiple rare factors, including metal composition, die state, strike quality, and preservation, because condition plays a crucial role in determining value, and a spectacular error coin that remains in near-perfect or mint state condition is exponentially more valuable than one that shows heavy wear. And this is why coins that escape into circulation unnoticed and are later discovered in pristine condition are so thrilling to collectors, because they represent frozen moments in time that survived against the odds. And authentication is another critical component of this story, because any coin rumored to be worth millions must withstand intense scrutiny from experts, metallurgical testing, die analysis, and comparison with known specimens, and the process of certifying such a coin can take months or even years, but once authenticated the value can skyrocket, especially if the coin is confirmed to be unique. And uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in numismatics, because collectors are willing to pay extraordinary prices for the opportunity to own something that no one else can ever have, and the 1997 D cent occupies a fascinating place in this landscape because it comes from a year that many people still have in their pocket change, making the hunt feel accessible and exciting, and this accessibility fuels the imagination and keeps collectors searching, roll by roll, coin by coin, hoping to uncover the next great discovery. And as we continue deeper into this story, we will explore even more possibilities, including strike-through errors, missing design elements, wrong die pairings, and the psychological forces that drive multimillion-dollar coin sales, because the story of the 1997 D cent is not just about metal and mistakes, it is about curiosity, chance, and the enduring belief that extraordinary value can be hidden in the most ordinary places. And this is only the beginning of the journey, because the deeper we go, the more astonishing the potential becomes, and in the next part we will continue unfolding how these rare errors interact, how market demand amplifies their value, and why the 1997 D1 cent remains one of the most intriguing modern coin legends ever discussed. Next, 1985 D1 cent coin. To the channel everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today, because if you enjoy uncovering shocking stories about ordinary coins that turn out to be worth extraordinary amounts of money, then you are absolutely in the right place. And today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and underrated modern coin mysteries, the incredible story of a 1985 D1 cent that has been rumored, debated, analyzed, and dreamed about as a coin that could potentially be worth up to $3 million due to a rare combination of minting errors, production mistakes, unusual circumstances, and numismatic possibilities that transformed what should have been a simple everyday penny into a potential multimillion-dollar treasure. And it almost feels unbelievable that something so small and common could hold such staggering value. Yet history has proven again and again that when the right mistakes happen at the right time, even the lowest denomination coin can become a legend, and the 1985 D Lincoln cent sits at a particularly interesting point in U.S. mint history because it was struck during a transitional era when the mint was still adjusting to the relatively new copper-plated zinc composition introduced in 1982, while simultaneously pushing production to massive levels to meet nationwide demand. And whenever speed, pressure, and evolving processes collide, the door opens for errors, and it is within those cracks of imperfection that rare coins are born. And to truly understand why a 1985 D cent could reach such an incredible valuation, we first need to understand what the coin was intended to be, because the extraordinary only stands out when compared to the ordinary, and under normal conditions the 1985 D Lincoln cent features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse designed by Victor David Brenner and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been standard for decades, and the coin was supposed to be struck on a zinc core with a thin copper plating weighing approximately 2.5 grams, produced in enormous quantities at the Denver Mint, making the vast majority of examples worth exactly 1 cent, yet hidden among those billions of coins were opportunities for mistakes that could completely redefine value, and one of the most powerful possibilities surrounding the 1985 D cent involves wrong planchet errors, which are among the most desirable and valuable mint mistakes in the numismatic world. And a wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or made from the wrong metal entirely, and this possibility is especially intriguing for 1985 because the mint was still dealing with both pre-1982 copper planchets and post 1982 zinc planchets during that broader era, and while official production had shifted, leftover materials, experimental blanks, or improperly sorted planchets could still theoretically find their way into the striking process, and if a 1985 D cent were struck on a solid copper planchet weighing around 3.11 grams instead of the standard zinc core, the discovery would send shockwaves through the collecting community, because post-transition copper cents are incredibly rare and intensely sought after, and the value of such a coin would depend on authentication, condition, and uniqueness. But if only one or two examples existed, a multimillion-dollar valuation would not be out of the question, and beyond copper there is also the possibility of a 1985 D cent being struck on a foreign planchet or a planchet intended for another U.S. denomination, such as a dime or even an experimental alloy blank, and such errors are prized not only for their rarity but for the mystery they represent, because they force collectors and researchers to ask how such a mistake could possibly occur in a highly controlled environment, and these questions add layers of intrigue that fuel demand and drive prices upward. And another major factor that could push a 1985 D cent into the $3 million range is the presence of dramatic die errors, especially those that occurred briefly before being corrected, resulting in only a tiny number of affected coins escaping into circulation, and these include massive die breaks, shattered dies, retained cuts, and other forms of catastrophic die failure that produce coins with bold, raised distortions, missing design elements, or dramatic deformations that are impossible to ignore, and collectors are drawn to these errors because they serve as physical evidence of stress, fatigue, and breakdown within the minting process, and a particularly extreme example from 1985, especially one that displays multiple dramatic features on both sides of the coin, could easily become the finest known specimen of its kind, a status that carries enormous value in the numismatic market, and when such an error coin is preserved in high-grade condition, the value increases exponentially, because condition rarity compounds error rarity, creating a perfect storm of desirability. And then there is the fascinating world of multiple strike errors, where a coin is struck more than once due to a failure in the ejection system, resulting in overlapping images, rotated strikes, and distorted shapes that challenge the very idea of what a coin should look like. And when multiple strikes occur in combination with off-center positioning or broad strikes, the result can be visually stunning and completely unique, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in coin collecting, because a collector who owns a one-of-a-kind piece owns a slice of history that can never be duplicated, and another critical category of errors that plays a significant role in the multimillion-dollar potential of the 1985 D cent is true double die varieties, which are often misunderstood but highly prized when genuine, and true double dies occur during the die creation process when the design is impressed more than once in misaligned positions, resulting in clear, separated doubling on lettering, dates, or design elements, and if a 1985 D cent were discovered with a bold double die obverse or reverse that rivals famous examples like the 1955 double die cent, it would immediately become one of the most important modern Lincoln cent discoveries ever made, and such a coin would attract attention from major collectors, grading services, and auction houses worldwide, driving competitive bidding that could push the value into the millions, especially if the doubling were dramatic and easily visible without magnification. And beyond these well-known categories there are also strike-through errors, where foreign material such as grease, cloth, metal shavings, or debris interferes with the striking process, resulting in missing or distorted design elements. And while minor strike-throughs are relatively common, major strike-throughs that significantly alter the appearance of the coin are far rarer and more valuable, and a 1985 D cent with a dramatic, well-documented strike-through error could become a centerpiece of any advanced collection, particularly if the foreign material was retained or left a clear impression that tells a compelling story, and the story behind a coin is often just as important as the coin itself, because collectors are storytellers at heart, and they are drawn to pieces that spark imagination and curiosity. And this brings us to another crucial factor in the $3 million conversation, which is authentication and provenance, because any coin rumored to be worth such a staggering amount must withstand intense scrutiny, including metallurgical testing, die state analysis, and comparison with known examples. And once a coin passes this rigorous process and is certified by a major grading service, its legitimacy is cemented, and legitimacy transforms speculation into reality, opening the door to record-breaking sales, and the idea of a 1985 cent being worth millions is not just about the errors themselves, but about how those errors intersect with market demand, collector psychology, and the timeless appeal of discovering hidden value, because there is something deeply exciting about the notion that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with curiosity and patience to find it, and the 1985 cent embodies that dream. Because it comes from a year that is still relatively modern, meaning countless examples remain in circulation, coin jars, and collections, keeping hope alive for treasure hunters everywhere, and as we continue deeper into this story we will explore even more layers of possibility, including wrong die pairings, missing mint marks, extreme misalignments, and the economic forces that drive multi-million-dollar coin sales. Because the legend of the 1985 1 cent is not just about metal and mistakes, it is about chance, discovery, and the enduring belief that something ordinary can become extraordinary, and this is only the beginning of the journey, because in the next part we will continue unfolding how these rare errors combine, how collectors determine ultimate value, and why the 1985 1 cent remains one of the most intriguing modern coin legends ever imagined. Last 2001 1 cent coin. To the channel everyone, and thank you for being here today, because if you enjoy uncovering incredible stories where everyday pocket change turns into life-changing money, then you are absolutely in the right place. And today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating modern penny mysteries of all time, the astonishing possibility that a simple 2001 1 cent could be worth as much as $2 million due to a rare and powerful combination of minting errors, production mistakes, overlooked anomalies, and extraordinary circumstances that transformed what should have been an ordinary copper-plated zinc coin into a potential multimillion-dollar treasure. And it's stories like this that remind us why coin collecting continues to captivate people around the world, because the idea that something so small, so common, and so easily ignored could secretly hold immense value feels almost magical, yet time and time again history has proven that when the right mistakes occur at the right moment, value can explode beyond imagination, and the 2001 Lincoln cent exists at a particularly intriguing point in modern U.S. mint history, a time when production volumes were enormous, technology was advanced but still imperfect, and human oversight remained an unavoidable factor, and whenever billions of coins are struck at high speed, the opportunity for rare errors to slip through becomes very real. And to understand why the 2001 cent has become the subject of million-dollar speculation, we first need to understand what the coin was intended to be, because recognizing the normal allows us to truly appreciate the abnormal, and under standard conditions the 2001 Lincoln cent features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse designed by Victor David Brenner, along with the Lincoln Memorial reverse that was used from 1959 until 2008, and the coin was struck at the Denver Mint on a zinc core with a thin copper plating, weighing approximately 2.5 grams, and billions of these coins entered circulation, making most examples worth exactly 1 cent, yet hidden within that massive output were rare moments of mechanical failure, material mix-ups, and die problems that created coins fundamentally different from what the mint intended. And one of the most powerful possibilities surrounding the 2001 cent involves wrong planchet errors, a category that has produced some of the most valuable modern U.S. coins ever discovered. And a wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or made from the wrong metal altogether, and while this may sound unlikely in a modern minting environment, history has repeatedly shown that such mistakes can and do happen, especially during periods of high production when multiple denominations and metal compositions are being processed simultaneously. And if a 2001 cent were struck on a solid copper planchet similar to pre-1982 cents, the discovery would be nothing short of monumental, because by 2001 solid copper cents were no longer used, making any post-transition copper cent an extreme rarity, and collectors are especially obsessed with these transitional and wrong metal errors because they represent moments where old materials, leftover blanks, or experimental planchets accidentally enter the production stream, and if such a coin were authenticated through precise weight measurements, metallurgical testing, and die analysis, its value could soar into 7 figures, particularly if only 1 or 2 examples were known. And beyond copper there is also the possibility of a 2001 cent being struck on a foreign planchet or on a planchet intended for another U.S. denomination such as a dime, and these errors are prized not only for their rarity but for the mystery they create. because they force collectors to ask how such a mistake could possibly occur within a tightly controlled system, and that mystery adds to the allure and drives demand. And another major factor that could push a 2001 D cent toward the $2 million mark is the presence of dramatic die errors, especially those that occurred briefly before being detected and corrected, resulting in only a handful of affected coins escaping into circulation, and these include massive die breaks, retained cuts, shattered dies, and other catastrophic failures that leave bold raised metal, distorted lettering, and missing design elements on the coin's surface. And collectors are drawn to these errors because they serve as physical evidence of stress and breakdown within the minting process, and a particularly extreme example from 2001, especially one that combines multiple dramatic features on both sides of the coin, could become the finest known specimen of its type, a status that carries enormous weight in the numismatic world. And then there is the fascinating category of multiple strike errors, where a coin is struck more than once due to a failure in the ejection system, creating overlapping images, rotated designs, and distorted shapes that defy expectations, and when multiple strikes occur in combination with off-center strikes or broad strikes, the result can be visually stunning and completely unique. And uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value because a collector who owns a one-of-a-kind piece owns something that can never be duplicated, and another critical element in the $2 million discussion is the possibility of a true double die error, which is often misunderstood but highly prized when genuine, and true double dies occur during the die creation process when the design is impressed more than once in misaligned positions, resulting in clear, separated doubling on letters, numbers, or design elements, and if a 2001 D cent were discovered with a bold double die obverse or reverse showing dramatic separation similar to famous historical examples, it would instantly become one of the most important modern Lincoln cent discoveries ever made, and such a coin would attract intense interest from major collectors, grading services, and auction houses, driving competitive bidding that could push the value into the millions, especially if the doubling were strong enough to be seen without magnification. And beyond these well-known categories there are also strike-through errors where foreign material interferes with the striking process, leaving missing or distorted design elements, and while minor strike-throughs are common, major ones that significantly alter the appearance of the coin are far rarer and more valuable, and a 2001 D cent with a dramatic, well-documented strike-through could become a centerpiece of an advanced collection, especially if the foreign material left a clear impression that tells a compelling story. And the story behind a coin is often just as important as the coin itself because collectors are drawn to pieces that spark imagination and curiosity. And this brings us to the crucial role of authentication and provenance, because any coin rumored to be worth $2 million must undergo intense scrutiny including metallurgical analysis, die state comparisons, and expert verification, and once a coin passes this rigorous process and is certified by a respected grading service, its legitimacy is established, transforming speculation into reality, and legitimacy opens the door to record-setting sales, and the idea of a 2001 D cent being worth millions is not just about metal and mistakes, but about how those mistakes intersect with timing, condition, and collector psychology, because there is something universally exciting about the idea that extraordinary value could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered, and the 2001 D cent keeps that dream alive because it comes from a year that many people still encounter in everyday change, fueling the belief that the next great discovery could happen at any moment. And as we continue deeper into this story we will explore even more possibilities including wrong die pairings, missing or distorted mint marks, extreme misalignments, and the powerful market forces that drive multi-million-dollar coin sales, because the legend of the 2001 D1 cent is not just about errors, it is about curiosity, persistence, and the timeless thrill of discovery, and this is only the beginning of the journey because in the next part we will continue unfolding how these rare errors combine, how ultimate value is determined, and why the 2001 D1 cent remains one of the most intriguing modern penny legends ever imagined.